Welcome once again to a new little tape set. These next two tapes are all based upon a book written by Billy called The Psyche. And this book covers quite a bit of interesting information. Among the fascinating things that Billy learned throughout his lifetime, as well as through his contacts with the Pleiadians and other races, was a lot of information about how we think, what spirituality is. We've already listened to some tapes on about the Talmud Emmanuel, about Jesus and Emmanuel. And if you've listened to the tapes on creation now, you have some foundation for the Pleiadian philosophy about what a creation is, how it creates a universe, and how it creates life forms, and how we ourselves, our humans, go through those life cycles. So we're providing a foundation for moving up to the point of day-to-day thinking. Okay. Now we're moving into an area, after listening to the meditation tape, you've got some ideas now psychically about how your psyche works, how your brain works, and the different parts of ourself, the material side and the spiritual side. We've gone over that a little bit. So we're going to go a little farther into that now and start trying to apply some of this information to our day-to-day living. And most of this is brought out, like I say, in this book written by Billy called The Psyche. And it has, of course, to do, it's in direct meaning to the psyche of the material mind, which is the storehouse for all of our feelings and thinkings about ourselves. It's, it's the persona. It's how we perceive the world, so to speak. So that was the title for his book, but it deals with a number of things, going over memory, concentration, how to actually learn how to think, and so forth. And so all of this is about developing a correct psyche in your material life. Most of us go through our lives, a little bit confused, trying to figure out why we're here, what we're doing, things. And if you just look around you, notice all the people that are, reacting strangely to different things in life. They somehow will get frustrated or angry or whatever, or they get depressed. Surely you must know some people that are very positive and everything just seems to go well for them. They seem to be very lucky in life, and they always seem to have an attitude that serves them well, so things go their way in life. They're always up. Okay? And other people seem to be sometimes always kind of depressed. And these are the people that can't seem to ever do anything right. And they always have an attitude like, oh, woe is me, it just won't work, or I don't know what to do, and so forth. And of course, we're all different, so we're all at varying stages and mixes of attitudes. But that attitude we form about life, that big attitude that's in our psyche, all those feelings and thinkings that we get, project really how we deal with life. And that's what this book is all about. At the very beginning of the little book on the psyche, Billy has a little thing on spirit healing to define what that is, because it starts to set the framework for the things that we're going to talk about and brings up some important points about what a spirit actually does. Spirit healing. You've probably all heard that phrase. It indicates someone who heals someone else by virtue of the spirit. Spirit healing means healing through the powers of the spirit. Powers of the spirit. That's an interesting phrase. We have a material conscious mind. We're beginning to understand that we also are spiritual beings, but does the spirit actually have power? Yes, it does. And that power is created through a knowledgeable clarity of thought, where we manifest thoughts and feelings and ideas, and the spirit becomes strengthened in that. It gains in its personal force through power of thinking, through power of knowledge, through power of wisdom. So when we say the power of the spirit, which means that we are, using a today's word, programming the spirit through wisdom, knowledge, and clear thinking, we begin to program the spirit to be able to have knowledge of its own and grow. It, of course, already has some wisdom. It has the wisdom, the accumulated wisdom of previous lives that we can build upon. Now we're going to add new things to it, new thoughts, new logic, and so forth, that make the spirit even stronger. And as we start, addressing the things in life, the difficulties and problems of life, using our spirit, which cannot be ill, cannot be logical, and so forth, when we can call upon that great power of our spirit, which also has the force of being able and the ability to be able to call upon the force of the universe within itself, then, we can deal with things very strongly. This is real power. When we have power even beyond ourselves, power that we are capable of call upon, this universal power, the power of creation that is out there and available to all of us. So when we say spirit healing means healing through the powers of the spirit, we're talking about being able to provide the power, through the use of our spirit, provide logic and ability to someone else that they can kind of use, kind of borrow, kind of get themselves jump-started to heal themselves. So you can activate the spirit of a sick person. A sick person, one who has, say, some sort of illness of the liver or kidneys or something like that, some sort of illness of the body. It might even be an illness just of the mind, some sort of sickness in their psyche. You can help that person. And what you do actually is through the force of your own spirit, through the clear thinking, logical power of your spirit, you can activate their spirit. Because see, they actually heal themselves. You must motivate and make their spirit work for themselves. Because in most cases, quite a few cases, they're probably sick because of the ill, negative thoughts in their spirit. They're probably using their spirit improperly, if they're using it at all, or they're thinking so negatively and depressively they may have been causing the illness. But at any rate, their spirit is probably down, and they're not knowledgeable or aware that they can actually use their spirit to correct an illness that's within the body. So you can motivate and make their spirit useful. This is going to require a lot of brain work on their part, because the fact is they have to do the actual healing. You know, it's possible that yourself, you can lend a hand, so to speak, some power of your own spirit through logic and clarity to get them started and so forth, but they have to want to do it themselves. There are people, of course, among us who are stronger at this than others. There are people whose force of spirit sometimes is so strong they can almost effect a cure or healing all by themselves. By the pure nature of their own spirit, they can actually cause another person's spirit to do things, to actually set things in motion in another person and cause the healing. But what they're actually doing is using the other person's spirit to do the healing. It isn't their own. It's through the force of their own spirit that they're able to direct and motivate the other person's spirit. Okay? So the other person actually has to do the brain work. He must heal himself. You can start the ball, the rolling, give a push in the right direction, whatever. You can also use the magnetic field, your auric field around yourself, to also affect people. This is where hands-on healing comes into play. This is also another way that can be effective, where the power of your spirit. We're going to talk more about the aura later on, but just for our short little story right here, bear in mind that the aura projects the thinking of the individual, that who you are spiritually is projected in your aura. If you are a person of great power of spirit, clarity and logic, then it not only shows in your aura, but it affects the aura as far as the magnetic field and the actual frequencies in the aura. So your aura itself can come in contact with the aura of another person and serve that purpose also, as to actually heal. This is a very good way to get rid of headaches and things like that. If someone's just kind of feeling down or a little achy and painful and so forth, you quite often can just blend your aura with theirs, and that's commonly done like usually with the hands. Hands are great areas of sensitivity. You can move your hands into the aura of another individual and hold it there for a period of time, and generally a headache will probably go away. What's happening here is the frequencies. The frequencies of your aura, of your power of spirit, then, are actually moving into the aura of another person and causing a realignment of the magnetic field of their aura, which has an effect on their body. So that's entirely possible also. The person, though, normally has to accomplish his healing on his own through the power of his own spirit. And this is going to require an awful lot of neutral, positive, what we call mental attitude, which I'll explain more on, but basically it's what's called balanced thinking, where the person then, the force of his spirit doesn't think negatively. The force of his spirit doesn't think negatively or positively. It thinks neutral, and that's referred to as neutral positive, meaning that by thinking neutrally, you're going to have a positive effect on yourself. Okay? The spirit healer or healer is someone who through mental powers is able to help or even cure an ailing person. In most cases now, this is not a professional person. Generally on this planet right now, professional people who aspire to be doctors, psychiatrists, and psychologists and so forth generally do not subscribe to what we're talking about, which would be referred to as metaphysical thinking or spiritual thinking. They generally don't use these techniques. The reason for that is, if you go to college in our country or most countries, that you have to take the courses that they prescribe in order to get the degree. If you don't get the degree, then you can't have the title. If you don't have the title, you can't get customers. In order to be a doctor, you must take certain classes. You have to subscribe along with the standards set by the medical institution of whatever country you're in. And when you put your shingle out on the door, then you are given a set of guidelines by which you can operate. If you wish to, remain with the title that you have. If you want to be Dr. Whitworth or whatever it is, then you have to, use the methods that you learned in college, and you have to follow the guidelines prescribed to you by your American Medical Association, which tells you which drugs that you can sell and prescribe, which ones that you can't, which kinds of curing or healing techniques that you are allowed to use, and which ones you cannot. This is dictated to the doctors. So the doctors in most cases don't have a lot to say so, especially in today's market, in today's society in America, where we're so attorney crazy. If a doctor were to actually try something, border science idea, like try to affect cancer with ozone or hydrogen peroxide, or one of these border science ideas which do prove quite useful in many cases, he can lose his license. Oddly enough, there are many doctors even in jail right now because they tried things like this. So our legal system leaves something to be desired in this area for sure. It's a shame that many people, I would say many potential cures and ways of making people feel better are suppressed in our country strictly out of economics. But in any case, that's the main reason why most of these doctors don't use these methods. The other is just ignorance, and by that I mean ignorant of the information. These are not ignorant people. For the most part, people who put their energy into becoming a professional doctor, whatever, are very intelligent people. They have to be to pass all the classes and gain the knowledge. Okay? But on the other hand, because that there is no professionalism really in spirituality and metaphysics and so forth, there are many people claiming that they can do things and are complete charlatans. We have to watch out for that also. Because there are no requirements, licensing, studies involved to go out and call yourself a spirit healer. All that's really necessary is you go down to the local print store and get some cards made up and maybe tell somebody that you can cure them, and they'll say, sure, give it a try. They figure they got nothing to lose because you're not going to stick anything in them, make them take anything or whatever. And generally the person will, do some form of whatever they do, but most people really are not aware. They probably mean well, but they're probably not very effective either. So we have to be careful of unscrupulous people who would take advantage of us. It's one thing if someone who believes they have some ability or some power to help another, because actually we all do. If they're not charging for it, then it's fine. But beware of the individual who suddenly is charging a lot. If they are, let's get some references. If someone wants to charge heavily to perform some sort of spirit healing on you, I would suggest you talk to someone else they performed that on, and make sure in your own mind that you have the potential of probably getting some good satisfaction here. Healing through prayer, is that possible? Yes, it is. The reason is that we talk about the force of the Spirit. Okay, well, if you believe in prayer, if this has become part of you, and you put great strength into that, then your spirit does reinforce that. So even though prayer generally is a call outward, out to some other source, a person who believes strongly in that actually can have effect on themselves. So prayer can be also a potential way of helping to one's own self. Okay, the information that Billy put into this book, this is not a book like a story or whatever, and as a book, it's frankly not even written that well. By that I mean it's not laid out well, and it is just 60, 70 pages of information about the Spirit, about how we heal and protect ourselves, and about how we form the Spirit, and how we develop that psyche, that feeling and thinking center of our material brain. So I'm going to go through the ideas, and towards the end on the next tape, I'm going to give you some ideas on how you can go about through step-by-step developing a lot of things yourself. That's not in the book, so I'll have to kind of I'm going to go through that and add that part on myself. Billy's book does not go to the extent of actually showing you practically how to do things. There are no exercises and so forth. There are simply explanations of what you have to learn. And that's not really very simple, as you're going to see and hear about. There's a lot of new ideas contained in here. So I'll try to provide you some sort of explanation of exercises and examples you can go through to actually work on these things yourself. Okay? The purpose, of course, of this information in this little book that he wrote was to...
And that it is time that world governments officially acknowledge
We're going to have to follow a path of knowledge and the practical uses that it brings about. Your recognition and knowledge derived from this information will provide a correct way of thinking according to the laws of nature. Now, this may be new to most of you. We talked earlier about the laws of creation. The laws of creation primarily being concerned with the formation of the universe and all life within it, and the growth, expansion, and contraction of the universe. These laws, or logic, in other words, dictate exactly what the universe is doing and all life forms in it. It dictates, how the life form like us lives in a material and a spiritual life. It lays down the matrix, or the logic, of how everything functions in the universe. Then within that there is nature itself. And nature has its own set of guidelines and rules that also pertain to other things. And what we're going to be talking about here, and what Billy refers to as these laws of nature, is how beings like us react with our environment, our surroundings, and the nature that we live in. There are certain things which are laws, or we should say logic, by which the nature itself works. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on achieving a correct perception of life in the world around us. This information can be applied to our daily life, and that's how we're going to get results. This is very practical information. I wouldn't consider it theory, at least that's what Billy says. He considers this very practical, absolute, logical information. So it's the sort of information that you're going to listen to. You'll listen to an idea or two, and you probably want to stop at each point, think about the ideas that I'm going to explain to you, apply them, try them out, and make them part of yourself. If you're currently following ideas or standards that psychology lays down about how to live your life and how to think, you're going to find a lot of differences here. I would suggest, after listening to this tape, if you decide that you want to follow these concepts and principles and work on your own spiritual development, that you set aside any other particular ideas of psychology and psychiatry that you may be using at the time. Set those aside, because as you're going to hear, they are not in agreement with this way of thinking. Of course, on the other hand, I'm always very open-minded. You may come up with some great mixture of psychiatry and spirituality, which could be a major breakthrough for all of us. So if you do, let me know about that. After all, an open mind is a sign of intelligence. Okay. The lesson on hand is the teaching of the absolute cause and effect of the logic of the laws of nature. When you have what are called laws of anything, they're actually logical things. That means the way things work. So there's always cause and effect going on. Because something is so, because that's just the way it actually is, and there's cause and effect all throughout life, nature, and throughout all of the universe. What we're really after here is we're going to learn how to kind of maintenance of the mind. We're going to learn how to control our thinking and ourself so we can control our destiny, our future. Okay? To be successful at this, you're going to have to put some time into it, think about these ideas. You're going to have to make kind of a study of it. First, you're going to learn a lot about yourself, of how to observe the world very clearly and see it really is. You're going to have to develop not only the habit, but the normal process of keeping an open mind about things and allowing information to come in. It's when we get closed-minded, when we lock the doors on ideas and don't let other information in, that we get into trouble. Closed-mindedness can be caused by a number of things, but the general idea is if you become a closed-minded person refusing to listen to other information, then you're also stifling growth. Even if once you know about the absolute fact of something, it's still okay to listen to information about it. It serves you to strengthen also the fact that you know what you're talking about. And you might also be able then to help the person giving that information by giving them some of your information. So it's always good to keep an open mind throughout your life about everything. Besides, we just don't know everything, do we? You might want to look at this as kind of a daily thing. After listening to the tape, you might want to make some notes, write them down, and take an idea or two and work on it every day, say, for a little while. I'd say you should set aside like a certain amount of time each day and kind of study these things in slow order and to observe and understand the material pretty good, because there's going to be a lot of time of reflection. Later on, I'm going to talk about how you can instigate thoughts, send them out into the universe, have them come back into you, and you can study the reaction. And the idea will be is you're going to learn how the psyche develops in you. You're going to learn how the spirit actually gains in wisdom, and you're going to be able to watch and kind of monitor that process. In other words, you're going to be suddenly in control of your personal growth and also in charge of kind of patching up and maintenance on who you already are. Because we all like to think that we can improve ourselves a little bit, and we're going to learn later on about how we can look into who we are, into our past, and see how we've come to be who we are, and how we can actually make some changes in that a little bit. So that's going to take a lot of reflection, so don't plan on hurrying through the use of this information. You can listen to the tape all the way through, I'm sure most of you will, but then I would suggest again you go back through it and write down some ideas and then practice it on your own. When you do that, when you find yourself wanting to contemplate some of these ideas, time and tranquility are going to be necessary for you to study this. So you want to find like a quiet place or a quiet time of day, just like in meditation. Okay? Because you're going to be doing a lot of meditation actually on these new objects, these new ideas and so forth, and so you can feel your spirit grow. The morning's always a good time because the mind's pretty fresh when you get up. If not, then usually in the evening between 8 and 10 possibly. You might even want to get into the habit of talking out loud. I do that a lot because I'm always recording tapes like this at home and so forth, and I find it very useful just to talk out loud. I mean, I gain a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. It's very helpful to me always, even to me making tapes like this. I've done a lot of talking in classes and lectures, and I can assure you that I'm learning just as much as the people out in the audience are, because to say things out loud is to put thoughts and ideas into action, to speak them, to express them. And when you put them into action and so forth, it's an experience. And as we experience things, we learn from it. So it's always good to write things down. It's good to say things out loud. It's great for your own personal growth. Okay, you might also want to remember also that some of the things in here, some of the ideas and concepts about mentality and so forth are going to be kind of new. So go kind of slow and don't try to bite off the whole thing all at once. Because, you know, if you take this in small steps and think on each of these ideas slowly, then you'll find that you can grow very well in small steps. It's always better to start little things in action that cause the big things to happen. That's always the best way of learning. I think I made a reference once before, even when you go to school, when you're a freshman in college, you don't go get a senior book on your subject, dash it open and look at the ending. You know, in order to graduate, you work your way through all 4 years of studies in order to work your way up to the information that's presented towards the end of your studies. So that's the general process when you learn anything. I know it's always exciting to look at the end and see where you might wind up, but to actually learn something, it is also necessary that you yourself work your way through every little step and earn it, make it part of yourself all along the way. So maybe if you can, you might want to start setting aside a half an hour a day to do your meditation and start working on yourself. And try to get a normal schedule. Discipline is a key factor in anything in life. And if you set aside every day, say 20 minutes before you go to work or half an hour before you go to bed and look at it like something that must be done, like an appointment, then you'll find, you know, not only will you gain very well at that, but you'll find that there's a lot of fun in having discipline. You know, it makes your life more orderly, more logically. You're going to wind up having to instruct yourself and practice things on your own quite a bit. As I explain some of these ideas to you, you're going to have to figure them out, and you're going to have to literally sit down and kind of meditate yourself on what they mean to you. Some of the things I'm going to talk about will seem very normal to you. You'll agree with them. Other things you're going to say, well, that's probably right, but let me think about that. Other things you may not agree with at all, and that's okay too. I'm not here to tell you everything that I'm saying is exactly right. I personally agree with it and think it forms a very logical way of growing and understanding yourself. But the whole picture isn't in yet, and we're all different. So you be careful as you go through this. But in the end, the point is I'm going to have to make, you're going to have to learn it yourself. Just hearing information doesn't mean that you learned it. How often have you read a book and with great information in it, and you agreed with it, you thought, gee, that's great stuff, you know, and you remember parts of it, then you put the book on the shelf. And then you read another book or you go on about your daily life and you remember some things about it. But if you do not incorporate those things into your life, they don't become part of you. They're just in your memories. They're just information that's good at parties or whatever. So you didn't make any change in your life because of the things that you learn. You can do the same thing with this information, but at some point you may want to actually change your life, and you can look to this information as the methods, and the ways that you can go about doing that. And then you're going to want to come back and go step by step, where you have to learn it yourself and make it become part of yourself. Okay, repetition is a good idea. It's a good idea when you are learning anything. Repetition, it means multiple experiences. So as you practice your meditative exercises, as you practice your meditative immersion, as you practice forming your spirit, as you practice moving in time, as you practice, you're also going to do something called examination of waking state dreams, which we'll talk about a little bit later. As you do all of these things, and as you develop your memory, your concentration, and so forth, they're all going to take practice, and you have to do them over and over again. And a good way to do it is to explain to yourself how you're going to go about doing it. And you might want to even say out loud when you're working on each concept or idea. You want to talk to yourself like you're explaining it to somebody else, exactly what you're going to do and how you're going to go through the steps of what you're working on at any particular time. This creates intellectual knowledge and awareness. Like I mentioned earlier, reading a book is one thing, and some ideas go into memory. They're registered in your subconscious, and we hold them there, for future conversations. But when you actually do something, put experience and life into it, you intellectualize it. It becomes part of yourself. It adds to your intellect. Okay? It's one thing just to be able to recite a profound statement and to tell someone, for instance, that, oh yes, Einstein, E equals mc squared. That means energy equals mass times the speed of light square. Well, you sound very intelligent, but you're not intelligent. All you did was memorize a phrase out of a book. When you can explain what all of that means in detail, and having had experience of grinding your way through the formula, performing experiments of your own and understanding it, then you have gained an intelligence. You now have experience. And that's the way life is. We need to gain experience through the use of things, and then it becomes part of us. And that's what spiritual growth is all about. The next thing I want to touch on just a little bit is memory. And I've often been accused, you might say, of having a good memory, and I do have a good memory. I have my own methods, I would say, or techniques of remembering things. You're listening to all of these tapes, and probably, I would say, 80% of everything on these tapes I can recite at any given time. The things that I have trouble with, of course, are remembering an exact date or time that Billy had a contact, which number of contact it would be, but you could quiz me on these tapes. And I'm sure I could score in the 90th percentile somewhere, remembering everything that I've said, because I put everything in story association form. When I read information, I associate it. I see it in my mind being played out like an actual live experience, where I relate one concept to another. I always relate things. So I find ways of relating one piece of information to something that I already know. I don't know why I do that. It just always seemed to work for me, and I remember things well. I've never taken a memory course, but I'm sure if I did, I would probably find that the techniques that I use for association of ideas and building on known things are probably ways that memory technicians use anyway. Well, what I wanted to bring up about memory was the fact that quite often I run into people that you're going to have to remember a lot of things here. So besides, memory is a sign of a clear, strong, powerful mind. That's what I wanted to bring up. Many people who think they do not have a good memory are just plain wrong. You see, memory is a natural function of, the mind itself. Everybody is capable of remembering infinite amounts of information. Okay? The problem is that we block that quite often. You hear people complaining about a failing or a poor memory, or they say, oh gee, I just can't remember anything anymore. My memory is getting so bad. Well, that's not true. I mean, it may be true their memory's failing, but the memory itself inside still is there, and it is still capable of functioning at any time, at any age, unless there happens to be some sort of breakdown of tissue matter from disease or something. But a memory isn't necessarily bad or good, even though people claim that it is. You see, there is always the capability of a fully functional and correctly working memory. Memory disorder is caused by a number of things. One, lack of interest. People just don't make any attempt to even learn how to remember things. You remember things because you want to. You make a concerted effort to say to yourself, I want to remember this. And when you do that, quick little pieces of machinery go into gear in there, make some quick associations, and you make an effort to concentrate on something for a moment and remember exactly what it is. I still remember my phone number, years ago of most all of my jobs. I worked as an agent back in the 60s in the musical business, and I remember my phone number even in Chicago at the time there. And I remember my address and phone numbers when I was a child, because those.
And that it is time that world governments officially acknowledge.
And I associate things well, so that's how you remember them. Most people don't remember. The number one cause is they don't make any effort to. They have no interest in remembering, so their memory just keeps, they don't use it, so then they complain about it. Another common problem is overload of personal troubles and problems. If a person is suffering from nervous tension, strain on the job, whatever, these things preoccupy our thoughts. They frankly get in the way. They're just kind of like filters or whatever in our brain, and then you can't remember anything because you're so preoccupied with stress, problems, doubt, things like that. Fixed ideas and mentally disturbing thoughts get in the way. If you are a person given to following perhaps strange ideas and organizations and so forth that preoccupy you with too many fantasies and so forth, that will certainly get in the way. It's not healthy to preoccupy ourselves with illogical thinking and fantasies. It's particularly dangerous, like the movies and so forth we have with all the violence and so forth. It creates fear in people inside. Even though we might have a dramatic hero on the screen that the ending, beats the bad guys, you've just witnessed 90 minutes of a very immoral, violent way of dealing with things in life. That has an effect on people also. That can cause fears and so forth inside of you that can actually affect your memory also. People program themselves also that they have a bad memory. One of the first steps now to learn is the power of your subconscious inside of yourself. Okay? Your subconscious is programmable just like a computer is. Our brains are not so much different than a computer, and oddly enough, that's because scientists designed the computer around the way the brain works. They already learned that in the brain there are all these connectors that go off on all the time, and they designed a computer around the same thing. For those of you not familiar with a computer, the whole thing is built on a 1 and a 0. It's called binary code. 1 is on and 0 is off. And there are little switches inside, literally. They just go off on, off on, off on. And a certain arrangement of switches means the letter A. Some other arrangement of switches, on, off, on, whatever it is, means B, C, etc. And from there they've built up processors that imitate what the brain is doing in very simple format. Okay? So your subconscious inside of yourself can be programmed. Actually, it's being programmed all the time. It's just if you're not taking any care about it, it's going to get programming just kind of randomly on its own, however life deals it out. But your subconscious is open for business all the time. And as this pertains to memory, you can say to yourself, oh, I have a bad memory. I just can't remember anything. And you say that kind of offhandedly to people as an excuse when you can't remember something. Well, what you do every time you do that, you reinforce your subconscious that you really do have a bad memory. It becomes convinced that you have a bad memory. It also picks up your feelings why you really have a bad memory. Your lack of interest, your problems, your troubles, perhaps embarrassment or whatever. If you feel like you're not an intelligent person, you don't want to venture a guess at an answer, so you just hide. You don't even want to give one. Whatever the reasons may be, your subconscious really knows. You can't fool your subconscious. It is you. So if you program your brain, your subconscious, into believing that you have a bad memory, you reinforce that. Also, your material subconscious mind that's in there feeds information all the time, or attempts to at least, to your spiritual subconscious, your spiritual self. Your spiritual self will accept things that are based on wisdom, that are not illogical, that become part of you. And if you have become a person that continually builds up an energy in your subconscious of not being able to do things like having a poor memory, your subconscious and your spirit side picks up on that also. And you affect your spiritual growth. You start to form blocks in your spiritual side, not allowing it to grow also. So power of spirit can also be little blocks in there too. So we have to kind of be careful in there, because if we give our subconscious an order, like, I have a bad memory, it'll believe you. And it knows you do have a bad memory because you're not able to remember things because you're blocking it, you're not trying it, or whatever the problem may be. So your subconscious does take things literally. If a person can clear up their disturbing thoughts, their memory will return. as opposed to saying to yourself, I have a lousy memory and I just can't remember a phone number or anything, or gee, I'm sorry, I forgot your birthday or whatever. This person can actually learn to turn that around. And this is one thing you can begin working on right away, because we can all make improvements on our memory. And simple ways to do it is through concentration. You can learn to have a strong memory. You can start programming yourself that I have a beautiful memory. It's wonderful. I can remember everything. And you can concentrate on that. And as you do, as you start putting energy into the idea that you now have a good memory, your memory will start improving. And as you start finding out the things that, keep you from having a good memory, many of which I've mentioned already, and some of them may hit home with some of you people, when you find out those things and admit it and start getting them out of the way, the memory gets even better. And then you'll find out, gee, it actually works. My memory does improve. I can start associating things, and I can remember things, and it gets better, and it's not only useful, it just makes you feel better about yourself. Then you'll suddenly find out very quickly that you can program your subconscious. And that's a very good thing to understand. If you're not aware that you can, you need to know that, because that can be a major, major stumbling block and reason why people are not successful in life. They do not create a future for themselves because they have no knowledge or faith in the fact that they can program tomorrow. They can program your subconscious to go out there and be very powerful and perform for you. Well, let me give you 2 or 3 ideas on how you can begin to develop concentration. Of course, one idea would be, as we discussed on the meditation tape, the meditation exercise itself for concentrating on your own respiration or breath. We talked about that. If you didn't listen to that tape, that's a very good one to listen to before you listen to this one, because there's a lot of logical ideas and theory on there. They're going to help you with the stuff we're doing here, because you're going to do more and more meditating all the time. I'm not talking about the type of meditating where you're just going to sit on a hilltop and gaze at the sun off whatever. The type of meditating where you're just going to sit on a hilltop and gaze at the sun off whatever into nothingness. We're going to do practical things that actually change your life and change the way that you think. To develop a better memory, to develop power of spirit, to develop clear logical thinking, to develop a better self, to develop any kind of maintenance of the different parts of your mind and spirit, you must learn to concentrate. Concentrate and focusing is the very basic building block of starting to make yourself a better person. You have no hope of any kind of mind maintenance or growth without the ability to concentrate and focus on things, because without it, it is impossible to meditate. Meditation is a natural outgrowth of concentration. So let me give you 2 or 3 ideas and techniques you can do. If you're not one to use a lotus position or whatever, you can also use a candle. This is a simple one that probably most people have tried at one time or another in their life. All that's necessary to do is set yourself down in a nice comfortable chair and get a little candle, one that's going to burn at least for 5 or 10 minutes anyway, and put it about 1 yard away from you. A yard is 3 feet. So to many of us, that's just a little bit beyond an arm's length. Once you do that, find yourself sitting in the chair very comfortably and focus on the rim of the candle for about 5 minutes. I'm talking about the top edge of the candle just below the flame, right in there. Some people like to look right into the flame. Personally, I kind of look right at the bottom of it. And do that. Set a little clock next to you somewhere so you know how long you're doing this. And do it for 5 minutes, thinking constantly of the word sun, S-U-N. Okay? So stare at the candle, concentrate on the word sun, block out any other thoughts that come in. If you have to visualize the sun itself, whatever you need to do, focus right on there, keeping your vision right at it. And it does start working. Your concentration builds up. Here's the process. For the first day, the first time you do it, just do it for 5 minutes. And then add 1 minute a day until you can get up to 12 minutes. So the second day would be 6 minutes, 7 minutes, etc. You'd build up to doing this for 12 minutes. Okay? Keeping out all extraneous thoughts and other things and concentrating just on that candle and thinking of the word sun. Okay? Continue then for 6 days at this particular level right here when you can do this for 12 minutes. Once you can do that, increase the span up to 15 minutes and think of a rose. Visualize a rose in your mind as you're staring right into the flame and the rim on that candle for 6 days. Okay? Once you've gotten to this point, want to change the exercise just slightly now. You're going to continue this exercise for 15 minutes a day, but you're going to allow yourself to concentrate on a positive thought about your memory. And you can just pick it, because you're going to pick the phrase you're going to say, like, my memory is fully functional, my memory is perfect, I can remember anything. Whatever the phrase or thought or idea that you want to form, and use the same one every day. By concentrating on the same thought over and over, you put power into it. You put strength and conviction into it. Your subconscious picks it up. Your spirit then attaches to it. Because as you concentrate on things, your material, subconscious mind sends them to your spiritual self. And as your spirit picks up on it, you're growing spiritually. This is spiritual growth. And your power of your spirit increases. And that's what we're after. So do that. Practice that one. You could also do the same thing with like a glass sphere, like a crystal ball. Some people have crystal balls around their house. You can do the same thing with that. The difference is, of course, the crystal ball doesn't have a light inside of it. So you'll need to cast or shine a light somehow into the crystal ball so that there's a bright spot right in the middle of the crystal ball. And then do the same thing with that. Focus on the middle of it using the same thing, 5 minutes the first day, build up to 12 minutes, and go through the same cycle. Some people have a lot of crystals around the house. If you have a crystal perhaps on a chain or something like that, or a pendulum or a precious stone, you could do the same thing. All we're really looking for here is a focus point to concentrate on, something that's pleasing, something that works well for you. You need to produce that light spot on there, so it makes it so you can concentrate right on it. Here's another technique you might want to try that's a little different. You can also do this with a piece of paper with a couple of lines on it. Take a plain letter-sized piece of paper, and with a nice black marker or heavy pencil of some type, draw a straight line about 10 inches long. And then right next to that, draw another parallel line, just the same 10 inches long, about an inch apart, so you got two lines. Then take the piece of paper and a thumbtack or some scotch tape or something, stick it on the wall, and put it about eye level, because you're going to sit in a chair now about 12 feet away from it. Stick it on the wall, get your chair back up 12 feet, sit down at the chair and have the paper about eye level. Sit comfortably in the chair, concentrate on the lines on the paper, but this time don't concentrate on the word sun, concentrate on the word one, as in 1, 2, 3, because you got two lines here, right? And if you concentrate on one and think it, your subconscious picks up on it, and at some point when you concentrate, as you're staring at these two lines right in the middle, they become one line. Okay? Now you're going to experience something kind of nice as you're doing any of these exercises. What will happen is that as you continue to stare at these and focus on these little lights and so forth and concentrate, depending on the behavior of the individual and how much you do this and how much mental intensity you really put into it, at some point a very small point of light will change into like a sun, or what Billy calls a sohar. It's like a glowing ball of light that just presents itself as you're focusing and concentrating. And as you do that, this will grow. It gets larger and larger to the point that it fills your entire vision. And as you keep focusing on the same spot, what happens is you slip right off into this beautiful meditation. That's a beautiful meditation immersion technique. It glows right into this large glow, and it dominates like your whole field of vision. You'll see it happen. It's a very natural thing. Nice part is also when you attain this particular glow, when you get into this blissful state, this feeling, this is called meditation. That's what you're doing. As you do that, it stays with you even after you stop. The feeling, the blissful feeling and so forth, and the imagery that stay with you sometimes for hours or even days. So it's a very good way to bring yourself into a blissful mood. If you're just a person of stress, doubt, problems, or whatever, use this technique normally. Just grab a candle, whatever, and sit down and stare at it. Let that glowing ball come about, and it feels great. Another interesting thing that will probably start happening, and I'm going to get more into it later on, is after this glowing ball comes in and you get into this blissful meditative state where all of your vision looks like a glowing sun, after you stop these exercises, every now and then after that, little kind of incoherent images and so forth may just pop up and you'll see them in your mind's eye. Don't be alarmed about that. This is the very beginning of your spiritual subconscious starting to talk to you, and we're going to talk more about it later on, but don't be alarmed by that. It's a natural way. You're not used to being in connection with your spiritual self. So as these little light images and so forth come along which don't seem to make any sense, relax. They will make sense. Your subconscious will begin to feed your material mind information and symbolism about these images, and you'll be able to put the whole effect together. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So practice your concentration. Your memory will increase.
And that it is time that world governments officially acknowledge.
And this is the sort of thing that we need to practice anytime, because all forms of spiritual growth and clarity of thinking require concentration and the ability to do it at any given time. Okay? All right, I think we're getting close to the end of this tape, and the next thing I'm going to talk about before we go on is reflexology. Reflexology is, well, it involves the sole of the foot, and it's part of the lessons that we're going to talk about here. So the idea is that the concentration of your whole body goes into a nerve reflex zone in the feet, especially in the sole of the feet. So while we're talking about concentration, I'll discuss reflexology just a little bit, and I guess I'll have to meet you on the other side of the tape. So fast forward, I'll see you over there, okay? Okay, when we ended up on the other side of the tape, we were just starting to talk about reflexology, but Sony tape got in the way here, and I couldn't finish my statement. So let's start over here. I wanted to draw your attention to the fact, since we were talking about concentration on different things, that the body itself concentrates through all of its nerve endings. It concentrates what it's doing. A lot of its feelings go right into the nerve reflex zone in your feet. Now, this has been known for a long time, thousands of years. The ancient Chinese and other races were very aware of this. And today, the practice of massaging the feet and so forth and understanding how the nerve endings on the bottom of the feet are in direct contact with certain areas of the body is called reflexology. Okay? This is particularly important right on the sole of the feet, on the bottom of the feet. So quite often you will see a chart of the bottom of a foot, and it will have little lines and so forth, like a chart showing you all the different areas on the foot and which area of the body that actually affects. You know, as I'm talking on this tape, I do have one of those charts, and I'll see if I can get one, and I'll put it in the exhibit for you so you can have a copy of that also. If not, it's a good idea to get a hold of that chart, but I think I can probably find mine, and I'll put it in there. See, the idea is that since all of the, through the nerve zone on the bottom of the feet, on the sole of the feet, since we have the ability there to massage that and send impulses through the nerves up into the body, something pretty interesting can happen. We can clear up a lot of things in the body, causing minor ailments and so forth really to vanish away. Like I mentioned, in ancient times, the Chinese, which they still use it, and a lot of other ancient races were very aware of the value of foot massage. Many people, if they don't use their feet very much, if they sit all day long and so forth, they might suffer from a lot of minor ailments that could easily be gotten away just by some basic foot massage or walking around. Look to the many primitive tribes that we have that usually go barefoot all the time in Africa, and tribesmen and so forth, where they don't wear shoes. At the same token, they aren't subject to any of the normal civilized ailments that we have here. They hardly ever have them whatsoever. Of course, this doesn't prevent infection and things from coming into your body, but by massaging the bottom of the feet and pushing in certain areas, then you send impulses on these nerve areas through the body, and that actually affects your health. Because of that, it's a good idea to go walking barefoot for at least a half an hour every day over some wet, grassy, uneven ground. As a matter of fact, as I'm making all of these tapes, I do them barefoot because I'm moving around here in the studio, and I can move around on the floor and so forth, and I find even moving my feet and kind of, standing up on my toes every now and then, that affects me also. Try to find some area like a grassy area where the grass is nice and maybe some bumps in the ground so where you can walk around. And do that every day for a little while. Don't walk on concrete or asphalt. The flat hardness doesn't do that much good. I mean, it's better than walking around with shoes, but not much. So you want to find some uneven, grassy ground. That works the best. You know, if you search your thoughts, you're going to remember when you were young how much you enjoyed going barefoot. You think there might be something to the idea that the spiritual subconscious knows that, and it's trying to get you to walk around on the bottom of your feet. It's trying to, like, heal itself and affect itself, and we just don't pay any attention. Well, it's not only possible, I'm sure that's probably what it's doing. If you use foot massage, you may notice some pain in certain spots. If you go to someone who understands reflexology and they want to give you a good foot massage to work out some things, they can, by touching certain areas on your foot, when they find pain, they can find these are the areas that are clogged up and so forth. And they will massage that area and work it out. Now, you're liable to be going, ouch, ooh, 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 that hurts. But, of course, they're not going to stop because you just paid them $25 to, clear up something in you, so you're going to get your money's worth. And they shouldn't stop because these are the areas of congestion. These are the areas where your body is blocked up and is suffering from some minor ailment. And there's actually sending impulses through your body then, which are going to help. It's going to be very beneficial to you for them doing that. So put up with the pain a little bit. And through just daily doing that, the pain will slowly dissipate, and you'll find about the same time, the little ailment, whatever is bothering you, will also go away. If you want to use a little natural massage oil or something, that can be pretty beneficial too. If it's not convenient to go outside and walk around outdoors, you can walk barefoot around the house, but that's usually on flat ground, and so your feet don't get the individual massage action on different areas of your feet. You can use a walking machine. There are quite a few of those in existence now. You see a lot of people with them in their home, and that's better than nothing. But ideally, if you can get to it, go outside, go barefoot, at least walk around in your socks or something, and walk on grassy, bumpy ground if possible. Heavy shoes with very thick soles are not useful at all for this. If someone tries to sell you a pair of big platform sandals or something saying it's great for your feet, it's not. It really has no help at all. The smoothness adds nothing. What you really want are thin sole shoes so that your feet can feel the ground. The heavy sandals might give you some support in certain areas. There could be some logic to that. But if you wish to perform reflexology on your body and stimulate through the nerve endings on your feet, you need very thin shoes, like Italian loafers or moccasins or something, where your feet can actually feel the ground as you're walking along. All right, let me move on to a little different subject now. We've got you concentrating and staring at candles and rubbing your feet and so forth, and I'm sure by now you're already feeling a little bit different. Let me talk a little bit about how powerful a thought can be. Earlier on one of the tapes we talked about that the creation itself is an idea, and that the creation itself created the universe strictly out of the embodiment of its idea. It had an idea to create one, and it did. Consequently, the universe is all coarse matter and fine matter. Coarse matter being solid, fine matter being the etheric, non-solid matter. So a thought actually can be concentrated on to the point eventually it can become solid matter. Now, I kind of doubt if any of us are going to be able to do that. Even no matter how hard we think, we probably could not cause something to materialize. We're just not that developed. People on other worlds perhaps that are far more developed than us who understand that, and they also understand in the workings of the laws of nature, probably can do that at some level of development in their life. But, for the most part, Earth people can't do that yet. Maybe if we got everybody at Earth concentrating on the same thought, we might be able to really do something miraculous. But at this point, no. But we can put power into thoughts. Any person who concentrates on an idea for a period of time will see that the idea will come to pass. It's very simple. If you think about any idea, just something that you want to do, be getting a haircut or having your nails done or buy some clothes or whatever, just some simple idea, any action always starts with a thought, doesn't it? Quite often you'll find yourself during the week thinking of something you want to do on the weekend, and you think about it again, and then you explain it to somebody else. You're starting to put power into that idea, aren't you? And the more you think about it and concentrate upon it, each time you think about it, you reinforce it a little bit stronger with some new parameter. If it's going to be buying a new pair of shoes on the weekend, by Tuesday when you think of it, it's just a good idea. I'd like some new shoes. Wednesday you start thinking about the shop, maybe where you're going to get them. Thursday, you're thinking about what they're going to look like, how much you're going to spend. You check your checkbook to see if you got the money. Friday, you call a friend and make plans to meet them at the mall at noon. You know, the plan is in action. And the action hasn't happened yet, but all week long you've been putting power into this thought. Now, we do this all the time, all day long, but most of us take these kind of actions totally for granted. And we don't realize how much power there is actually in our thinking. As a matter of fact, it is. You have to be very careful what you do think, because in most cases, it will happen. There is great power in how you think. This, to make a little side note here, in Billy's book, he's always making reference here. In Billy's book, he's always making references to how people are led astray by what he calls religious heresies and wrong thinking and so forth. Well, to some extent, he's probably right. I'd like to point out something here that he's talking about in reference to religions and power of thought. He's commenting on the idea that people create the concept of God. We're not born with that idea in mind. When you get a certain age, you're taken to a church and you're taught the stories of Christianity, and you're taught that there's a God who created you. And as soon as you find out that, gee, somebody made me or created me, then right away, you know, you feel like you should have a little respect for this, whatever it is. We never see a God. No one's really sure there is one, but we manage to manifest the reality of one by continuing to concentrate on the idea. People who are into believing into God, and I'm not against that, you believe whatever you need to believe for yourself. If you're into that, you manifest that eventually where you begin to believe that it's very real. If you think about it hard enough and reinforce it with study, with lifestyle and other things, then it becomes very real to you. It's just as real as those shoes that you bought over the weekend. If you believe an action is possible, it becomes very real. And quite often, and the point Billy was making is quite often so-called religious miracles, that's exactly what they are. When people think that they have seen an angel or the Mother Mary or Jesus or something in the sky, quite often that's exactly what that is. They have put so much force into the thought of creating these things that they believe it's actually real. Someone else would not see it at all, and they think, that you're probably off your nut or whatever. But a miracle is a term for something that enlightened people cannot explain. There are no miracles because everything can actually be explained through the laws of the Spirit, the logic of the Spirit. There are spiritual and creational explanations for all of these things, but these people are not aware of it. So, unfortunately, this happens to an awful lot of people. And Billy makes reference to that several times, how many of the so-called miracles throughout life are nothing more than simple things that can be explained spiritually, but because of the ignorant thinking of people, as he puts it, they just don't know any better, so they think it's a miracle, and that even reinforces these thoughts even stronger to them that it really happened, it's real. So now they're more and more convinced it's real, and they're led farther and farther astray from the real truth about what life really is. Your actions and decisions are only in small part caused by your material conscious mind. Now, to define this term, if you're not used to hearing it, the conscious mind is your conscious mind is your upfront thinking processes that you use all the time to gather information. All of your senses, sight, feel, touch, smell, hearing, taste, and so forth, are connected to your conscious mind. It's your conscious mind that, does the speaking and talking and listening and hearing. It gathers data and it expresses data. But behind the scenes, if you'll have your drawing there of our little material and spiritual head, you'll see that we also have a subconscious, that contains all of our memories and inner workings. It's the computer of our conscious mind. And then we also have a psyche, which is our storehouse. It's our feelings and how we think about things. It's our persona. That's in there. That's very important because the psyche is actually kind of who we are. That is the collection of all of your attitudes towards everything. And that becomes your persona, so to speak. And then there's the spiritual side also. So when I refer to the material conscious, I'm talking about the material side of yourself and the conscious part of your mind. Your subconscious mind, though, actually, again, is the real force. It contains all of the secrets, the great mysteries all about yourself. It contains all those interesting little things about you when you were young, growing up. All of those experiences, all those buried memories or so forth are down there in your subconscious mind. Your mind, it really has a marvelous memory. It's just that we choose not to find things, go looking for things, and we don't put any interest in trying to remember most things. We just let them fly right by us, but they're in there. You see, the life destiny of each person is right in there, tucked away in those memories. The subconscious is where you can take control of your life, however, though. You can override all of your upbringing and environment. There's lots of talk about, we are, where we've grown up, and there's certainly some truth to that. If you grow up in a very rich neighborhood, with this proverbial silver spoon in your mouth, if everything goes your way, you have your own sailboat when you're 10, your own Ferrari by the time you're 16. I'm sure I'm talking to a lot of you that have that. If you're in that particular position, then you've grown up, with a lot of things in common, taken for granted, and you led a pretty posh life as far as the material world, and that certainly affects who you are, as opposed.
And that it is time that world governments officially acknowledge
are starving to death, full of illness and so forth. He lives in a totally indifferent environment. And of course, all over the world, there are varying degrees of environments and so forth, and types of upbringing, types of belief structures, type of knowledge about things that are pushed onto us. So, of course, those are major factors in our life. But you can override all of these. The personal power of thought and the personal attitude of your life step into action. You can do that. Vast power can be created and called upon when the individual really becomes aware of the potential of his subconscious. Instead of dealing with everything with your conscious mind and not taking any control over your subconscious mind and programming it, then you are just exactly how the world dictates to you. If you make no effort to change or control yourself, you are going to be just the way the world dictates, just the way your environment dictates. How often have we portrayed the story in books and films where the rich guy's got his nose up in the air and has no contact with the middle-class guy, and the great moral of the story is that he learns a great lesson of humility somewhere and becomes one of the guys at the end and starts acting like a regular guy? Well, that's a typical idea that happens to all of us in some way or another. We are all a collection of all of our environments and experiences in those environments as we grow up, right? Well, if we don't make any effort to change that, there's no change in ourself. We just continue rambling on, being who the world around us dictates who we will be. Cause and effect. We react with our material mind, respond to it, and we don't make any effort to make any changes. But if we do, if through meditation, acquirement of new knowledge, through clear observation, we start recreating our viewpoints on things, if we start providing new knowledge about the world through clear observation, maybe read a book or listen to a tape or something and get some new ideas, we actually do change not only our old thoughts, but we start acquiring all these new thoughts and we become a new person. There actually can be major personality changes. Definitely an improvement in character, integrity, and things along these lines. So we certainly have control over our subconscious, and we can certainly program it. That's what we're doing right now as you're listening to this tape. You're starting to add on to your level of knowledge and information. And as you learn to concentrate and practice your exercises and so forth, it starts happening. Your abilities of concentration turn into wonderful moments of meditation. Through the meditation, there are great realizations of self. You become face-to-face with yourself, developing more integrity about who you really are, and you start making changes and adding new things to your character, and life then, you get a firm grip on it. That's when you become a powerful person. Once the individual understands that he can influence and control all this source of decisions and actions, this subconscious, then he wishes he can control it with intentional thinking. So, and then you say to yourself, well, how do I do this? This talk's cheap. Randy, how do I actually go about this to actually control my mind? Well, we're going to clearly explain that again as we go, but it's, for the most part, we're talking about a slow process of learning to concentrate, to develop a meditation immersion. These things have been explained. After you learn to meditate, we're going to learn more about ourselves through waking dreams and asking questions and so forth. So we're developing the tools and the knowledge that we need. And we have to start viewing the world through that keen, clear, pure observation, because we're going to start reprogramming how we think about things. And we're going to get rid of all the value judgments and the smearing and so forth that goes on in our society. And we're going to start seeing things clearly for exactly the way they are. The way you think, the concepts that you think, the thoughts that you have, the wishes, the fantasies when you go to the movies, the books you read and so forth, all this goes into your subconscious mind and forms your view of life. This is who you are. It also begins to create your destiny. Your destiny is just your future. It's tomorrow, it's next week, it's next year, it's the end of your life, it's where you're going. Even beyond the physical life, you're always forming it all the time, because there's a certain amount of programming you can do in the material world that goes on into the spiritual world, and even once again will return when you create a new material body. Part of that is your sex gender. You have control over that. You can change from male to female, from lifetime to lifetime, and this is one area where the individual actually has some say-so. Subconsciously, your mind's doing it all the time. Your conscious mind may not be aware of it. If you end your life up firmly male and are enjoying it and want to learn more that the male experience can be provided for in life, you will come back as a male. You're thinking that way. Subconsciously, your mind programs itself for its next gender. If you wish to have a say-so in that for whatever reason, that's an area that is entirely possible. So that's what I mean a little bit about controlling your future. Okay, here's how we form the essence of our life here in the subconscious mind. Here's where we create the future, we control our thoughts, control our thinking, and remember, whatever you start thinking about sooner or later is going to be, that thought's going to go into action. What you think are just unborn deeds. These are happening on the concept of development. Okay? As you think, you develop ideas, and they actually do happen. And remember, the more a person entertains a thought, the stronger it will gush forward and become a material thing, or a material action, or deed. Just like going out to buy those shoes this weekend. You know, if you spend every day putting a little energy into it, there is no doubt on Saturday you're going to go to the shoe store and buy those new shoes, right? I mean, we kid women about, you know, their urge to go shopping, but let's hand it to them. I mean, when they decide to go shopping, they put energy into it, right? They talk about it, and they get excited about it, and they go, and they spend. You know, there's definite action there. Guys are kind of mealy about shopping, you know. I mean, I go shopping whenever my girlfriend pushes me into it, and I don't like to go to malls too much, but when I do, I slowly kind of get into the mood, but I very seldom go out and just buy things for myself, unless it's electronic toys for my computer. I like to do that. But for the most part, you know, we got to hand it to women because they've taken control of shopping, and they are supporting the malls of America. Okay. Well, let me get back on track here where we're going with the subconscious. You know, quite often we think if you say something with your material mind, you think that you had complete freedom at that. You think you did that all by yourself. If you make some statement at a party, for instance, they're talking about, say, pick a subject, reincarnation's popular these days, and you suddenly burst out with, well, I think reincarnation is possible, and I think I probably was a butterfly at one time. And maybe you're even surprised that you said that, but you felt perfectly free in saying that. No one twisted your arm, and you probably, you may have said it for a variety of reasons, to be cute, to impress the girl sitting next to you or whatever, or maybe it was just a firm commitment, or recently you'd read a book on philosophy from the East, and you decided that was a cool thing to say, to kind of like as an opener to let people know that I know something about reincarnation, and so you made a statement. But at any rate, you thought you were totally in control of that statement, didn't you? Well, surprise, you actually weren't. My point here is that every time we get ready to say something or do something, it is not totally just our material consciousness that's in charge of that. It is your subconscious mind which plays a very big part in what we say and do all the time. And as we program our subconscious mind with all of our wishes and fantasies and dreams and so forth, we build all this into our subconscious mind. It's always there, and it's always there to use the character of ourself, who we are. Who you are is a collection of all of those experiences, ideas, and memories that's in your subconscious mind that we don't take the time to apply any maintenance to and do any programming to. There's an automatic mechanism in the subconscious mind all the time, and it doesn't consult your material self, your mouth, when you say things. It's just there always providing the information. Just like I'm doing here on this tape. You know, my material mind is talking, I'm saying these things, but all of this information is in my subconscious, and all of my ideas about how I feel about it are in my subconscious. Do I really believe this, or do I think it's a bunch of hooey, or whatever it is? My character is my subconscious, and that dictates the attitude by how I explain it to you. So when you say something every now and then, stop and just pause for a second and remind yourself that, or think about, why did I say that? I could have said that 6 different ways. You're aware that when you make a statement, depending on your attitude, It'll control how it comes out. You can say something very nice to somebody like, here's some flowers, happy birthday. Well, depending on your attitude, whether or not you really care about this person, it could come out like, yeah, here's your birthday, here's some flowers. You could pass it off, and obviously you really don't give a hill of beans about it. Or it could be really important to you, and you spend, oh, here's these flowers, I got them, and I grew them, and these are my special flowers, and you go on and on because it was very important to you to give these flowers to someone. Now, all of that, your attitude about how you say something comes from your subconscious in there. That's the gear work in there. That's the character. That's the engine which, determines who you are and how you project yourself out to the world. Okay? So it's important as we learn that the subconscious mind is actually in control of an awful lot of what we do, then pretty soon we're going to decide that I think I want more of a say-so in what the subconscious is doing in there. If I am my subconscious, if the projection of my character, if how people perceive me is really determined by who I am subconsciously, I think I better start performing a little maintenance on the subconscious. Maybe it's a good idea for me to have a talk with my subconscious. Well, how would I do that? It's very simple. Your subconscious mind doesn't have a voice, but your subconscious mind listens to everything. It's you. That's what you're doing. It's all the time feeding information in the form of information, data, knowledge, and so forth to your mouth to say things. It's providing the background of all that you know to form your sentences. So at some point, I hope you become intrigued and start controlling the subconscious mind, and that will dictate how you say, how you react, how you live, and how you feel. Another important point on this subject here is not only when you speak is your subconscious there, but maybe you're trying to solve an immediate problem, and you want to maybe just solve some problem in a relationship. Maybe it's about, I don't know, let's see, maybe it's about going to visit the in-laws or something like that. Even though it's an immediate problem, your material mind just liable to say yes, no, whatever, something like that. But how you deal with the problem now is going to come from the source of your subconscious. Okay? How you solve that problem, you're probably not aware of. When I use the word solve, how you solve the problem of dealing, say, for instance, with your wife to go visit the in-laws, that comes out of your subconscious mind. And that reflects on a lot of deep things about how you feel about in-laws, how you feel about the wife, and any number of things. The point is that it's not your conscious mind, it's not your mouth and your eyes and your hands and so forth, which on their own solve these problems. These problems are solved by your intelligence in your subconscious, and the attitude which is formed in your subconscious on how you respond to these things. So it's our attitudes and approach to life which controls how we react and solve these things. It's these attitudes, these philosophies, approaches to life, all meaning the same thing, that really decide whether a person starts a particular action deed with certainty or uncertainty. We talked earlier about being able to take a pause before you actually, do something. If you find yourself in a position where something comes up, you got to make a decision, pause just for a second and stop and listen to the little voice from your subconscious before you do that, and do things then for the right reason. You'll find that more often than not, then you'll start answering the way you really want to. You'll start speaking with more certainty, more self-reliance, and you'll be speaking with an attitude and a view of life the way you really want to present yourself. Instead, in some embarrassed form that you've knee-jerk response, that you've responded very silly or said the wrong thing or whatever. How many times have we said the wrong thing and done, wish I hadn't said that, or wish I'd said it a little differently to have a different impact? You didn't pause. You reacted super fast based on some sort of superficial thing, and you wish you had done it differently, and that's where the pause comes into effect. To stop just for a second, develop the habit of doing that, and then it becomes commonplace, where it'll be all the time. This increases stability of character. When you do that on a regular basis, then I think that's what they call maturity. When you start being more stable, and I may never be mature by those grounds because I still hang on too much to my childlike, playful, creative sort of mind. I enjoy it too much. So for me, the pause is important. When I'm making tapes or speaking or whatever I'm doing, the pause is something I learned a long time ago. It allows me to speak for 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, 24 hours, at the same level, the same tone, the same amount of excitement or whatever, because I have a little control. It's a pacing instrument. And at the little pauses that I interject just milliseconds in between sentences and voices allows me to think about where I'm going, what I want to say, and do some quick reconnaissance on my attitude as I'm projecting things. So the pause is very, very important. Another area that merits a little bit of attention are habits, and these tendencies we have to do things over and over the same way. We develop habits of how we respond to things. If you're in conversation and you always respond maybe with a little laugh, maybe you know someone that does that. Not picking on those people, it's just what I happen to think of at the moment. It's a common habit in conversation where people kind of giggle when they speak, like, you know, they're hoping you're going to like them when they say something.
And that it is time that world governments officially acknowledge
in predetermined acts that we do, these are the development of corresponding thoughts in our subconscious. And over a period of time, they finally get such a hold on us and a hold on that person that it changes your whole character, and it leaves kind of permanent imprint. Well, not permanent, but it makes a forcible imprint on your subconscious. And you start doing everything that way. If a person has a habit all the time, perhaps, of presenting information and acting rather silly or laughing or whatever, then the cause of that can actually, you can get to that cause. All these little insignificant thoughts, dreams, and fantasies, they're nourished daily and they're reinforced until they become like demons inside of us and kind of rule our actions. And if you think it's humorous always to say something like Elmer Fudd or make funny things, people talk funny and they do it all the time, you know. If we take that too far, we begin to look at someone like that like they're possessed almost with this concept, like they can't talk any other way, and it becomes almost an irritation. Well, you can get rid of those things. We can destroy these little build-up ideas in ourselves. We can take away the strength from them actually altogether. And you can do this by taking away the idea which caused them originally. You want to rethink a thought and kind of relive it and take it away. Take the strength out of it altogether. Thoughts form our lives. If we think a rich, happy life, we can have one. If we persist in negative and destructive thinking, it's also going to take over our lives and control our future, either way that we want to go. Ancient wisdom says that the master of destiny is man himself. So true. Okay? As you can see here, the overall scheme of what I'm trying to talk about is taking control of your thoughts and learning to control them through well-defined exercises, implanting new thoughts into your mind, new experiences. Think of those who think with strong concentration. They form their life and they obtain great happiness, don't they? When you see successful people, they're generally well balanced. They're people that kind of go straight ahead. They seem very lucky. They usually kind of glow and they're happy and they're forceful. They have a certain concentration to them. They're always focused on where they're going and what they want to accomplish. Other people, on the other hand, seem to think just the opposite. We have a lot of people who continually are thinking kind of negatively towards life. They seem to always be kind of depressed and disappointed on how things are going and have a general attitude like, gee, life's just so difficult and things are hard for them. Well, that also controls their future, doesn't it? That's just the way things do go for them because that's how they're programming themselves. It's just simply not possible to form any kind of viable philosophy of life if you think negatively, depressed, if you're selfish or faint-hearted sort of person. Because what happens is you develop failures in life, and then one failure in life after another reinforces the idea that your life is a failure. Pretty soon you're convinced of it. Your subconscious becomes programmed to thinking you are a failure, and what do you know you are? Remember, we are what we think. So be careful what you think of yourself, what you think about, and what you project, because these things happen. It's also possible to create kind of a spiritual vertigo. Vertigo meaning from high places you lose your balance and you start getting dizzy and you want to fall off the side of a building or whatever. This can be caused really by this failure syndrome. If you spend too much time thinking in that way where life is always failures and you don't really see how you're ever going to get ahead, at a certain point, you will kind of consume yourself with that kind of negative thinking. And it pulls you kind of into a large abyss or hole of thinking that's thought of as spiritual vertigo. A child, by the way, when a child comes into life and they're not yet aware of danger and spiritual effect overcomes danger with kind of a playful certainty sort of thing, they can see something dangerous could be happening. They don't know about it, so they don't react with fear. A pessimist, however, out of pure naked fear and anxiety, almost or even abruptly, loses any power of resistance and succumbs to the danger, where a child would just playfully fix it, whatever. So you can see when we come into life, we don't have all that programming yet. We haven't built up all of our fears and pessimism and disappointments and so forth. Our subconscious is not filled with all of that programming. So if we find ourselves in life like that, or we're not getting ahead, and we're not going really where we want to go, then reprogramming the subconscious is a pretty good idea, isn't it? Okay? It's the fear. If you're pessimistic and you create fear, then it's just, it just keeps kind of snowballing. You're afraid things aren't going to work. They don't work because you were afraid of it. Then you convinced, yep, I was right. I can't do this. And then you get, you instill it even farther. So stop that. Only the man who scorns death escapes it, but the despondent one will collect it. It's another old proverb I dug up from someplace. A fearful man and a spiritual failure will never master life, because fear, spiritual indifference, and inactivity over time will destroy all inner security and all will for the positive life. Your inner security, that inner feeling of self-reliance, of confidence that you get from the positive things that happen, the power that you build up, that inner security is the basic requirement for a good formation and utilization of the spirit and the life. It's like building blocks. One of the first things you always want to do when you're off on something is to gain information so you're confident that you can learn it. And then you learn things in steps, just like we do in school, don't we? Again, when you're a freshman, you don't start studying the senior books. You work on the freshman things and you build up to something. We don't get ahead of ourselves. So when you're building the power of your spirit, it's the same way. We first want to develop that inner security, the feeling of confidence that comes from knowledge. Whatever a person's in love with, into that he will be transformed, it says in Billy's book. And that's very true. When an idea takes hold over a person, it then transforms your whole essence, your whole life, then as a result of that spiritual influence. So if you find yourself actually in love with a person, an idea, whatever, you become consumed with that, don't you? And many times we can confuse love with need and other things, and then we kind of dump this, to use a word, on other people, and we can get slightly misled. This is something we need to be kind of careful with. It's through the constant schooling of the spiritual self that we rise to the highest quality of our lives. We need to constantly reinforce our spiritual self, that it's doing well, that it's okay. We build up this power of thinking, of being positive, of being confident. And once we do that, we add new knowledges and new experiences to it. And we're starting to create a very self-reliant, confident person that can accomplish anything that they want. To do this, we have to be willing to burst through the bounds of our current ego and so forth, and all the environmental pressures. We have to work on being happy and work on the development of building our spirit based on logic and wisdom. This is why earlier on the meditation tape I spent so much effort talking about pure and keen observation, seeing things exactly as they are, because that's what wisdom is, isn't it? Seeing things really the way they are, having real knowledge about something. If you want to really learn something about yourself, you have to be willing to painstakingly reflect on yourself, really see yourself as from an outside point of view almost, step outside of yourself, and really be very honest with yourself. And there's no one else listening, so you can do that. Be very honest with yourself and see exactly what your problems are, what you're reacting to, and where you want to go. And work on developing that. This is why in self-help programs quite often we'll see where they talk about role modeling, where you will see yourself the way you want to, maybe even paint a picture of yourself on the wall, well-dressed, successful. They want you to start visualizing, the way that you see yourself. And what happens is your mind just starts doing that. And they're correct. When you start putting force into that vision of yourself, you'll start acting that way. You'll start spending more time developing habits that lead you into thinking and acting that way. You'll change the way you dress, the way you talk and act. You develop a new self. The important thing is, as you do this, that you don't want to develop a new Frankenstein either. You want to make sure that you develop the correct self, the real you. Not some fantasy that someone thinks that you should be like, and not your version of Cary Grant or whoever it may be, or Marilyn Monroe or whatever. You want to develop yourself to its maximum potential. but you have control over who yourself is. So that's where the honesty and integrity comes in with yourself. When you add new things to your personality, make sure you're adding things that, are correct and right for you, not someone else's idea of what they think you should be. And when you do that, bring in new information that you're going to add to yourself and be honest with it. Okay? That's where keen observation comes in. Really observe information, even the things that you're hearing from me. For every 10 things I may say, one of them may be registered good for you. Some of the others may be of no use. Some of them may not either make sense or might even seem incorrect to you at this time based on how you're thinking. But if there are among the things I'm saying, if there are things that inspire and stimulate you, if there's information among here that you need at the moment that's good for you on your path, that's great. Make sure you understand it clearly. Don't take my word for it. Don't take what I say for granted. Don't even assume that I'm actually right about everything. I may not be. It's important that you go out and try it for yourself. Test out ideas. See them for exactly what they are. Just because Billy believed it and I learned it and it makes sense to me, I'm speaking now from my experiences and how I view things. You want to be able to do the same for yourself. So don't ever just accept things, just because someone tells you. Find your own truth. Make your own experiences. Listen and read to material and dissect it like a doctor under a microscope. Examine it carefully, listen to every word and see what it really means to you, because it's your subconscious, it's your psyche that you're affecting when you allow information to come in. Again, this goes back to our books and movies and films and things in our environment. We affect people greatly when we put all sorts of trash on the screen and in our papers and our magazines and so forth. You can't leave pictures of violence and people being naked and sick and so forth out there for people to see without it having some effect. The well-balanced person can cope with it fairly well and just kind of shrugs it off. The uninitiated, the people who are out of balance with problems, the children who are still have these virgin minds that are absorbing things like sponges, they take it all in, and it definitely has an effect on them. And all of these things serve to form who we are, and we have to deal with this information. This is definitely why eventually in our society we're going to reach the point where we take that element of trash out of our society, where violences in porn and so forth are no longer shown because they do affect people. So we have to get that out of our society. Kind of an interesting paradox I just thought of that's kind of funny is that around the world there are people like Billy and other people, gurus, masters, and so forth, who are what we call the thinkers of our world. These are people that are sitting around and they're contemplating existence. They're working on new ideas. They're working on their spirituality. They're trying to solve the mysteries of life, and they're delving into their spirit. They're using the spirit to try to build new self. They're providing new explanations and inspirations, like I hope that I am, to people. And quite often, though, the mainstream world out there thinks that we're a little off of it, or that we're a little nuts. Mostly that's because of numbers. There's more of them than there are of us. So they tend to look at us like we're the oddballs, when in fact it's just the other way around, isn't it? The people that are striving for truth in life, whether they're hitting the mark or not, they're trying. The ones that are striving to try to make themselves better, that they're trying to improve the quality of their life. If you take this path yourself, or if you're currently working on it, have the strength of conviction and knowing that you're right for yourself, that you're on your own path of evolution, you're discovering things for yourself, and it's important to you, irregardless of what somebody else thinks out there, especially in the American society where, numbers are not necessarily right. Might is not right, as they say in the military at any rate. It is not necessarily so. So have the strength of conviction to go out there and be a thinker and go look for things. Too many people depend on other sources of information for their might, for their right. This is what I have against cults and beliefs and formula groups and some kinds of religions and so forth, where people give up. They don't search for any new knowledge of their own. They accept the idea that some other higher source or outside source is going to take care of all their problems for them. They are not responsible for themselves. And that's where I have trouble going along with these ideas, because I'm a firm believer that we must all be responsible for ourselves and our own growth. We have to learn to take care of our own problems. If we did that, We would have fewer problems in our country, in our cities, communities, and in our own minds. So what life is all about is learning responsibility for ourselves and the world that we live in. We can't expect some other, person, belief, God, or whatever it's going to be to take care of these things for us, because they don't. All too often also I find that people who think like that, who are expecting someone else to take care of those things for them, they just don't want to admit that they're responsible for who they are. They look at their life and they're not that happy with it, whatever, and they like to blame it on somebody else. Like, how often have you heard someone say that, well, that's just the way that God wanted it. I guess it just didn't work out, but that's what He wanted. It didn't have anything to do with their effort. Of course not. They have to blame it on somebody else. And I think that's like a problem in our society. So even though I give everybody...
And that it is time that world governments officially acknowledge.
It's unfortunate when we blame our own problems on any outside influence. It's not correct. I don't believe it's the way to go. We've got to start taking responsibility for ourselves. Not only is it wrong, it causes damage to your psyche. Our psyche now is the storehouse of our feelings and thinkings. I think it leads to a destructive thinking process. When we're not being responsible for ourselves and we're thinking someone else is going to take care of our feelings and our future and our destiny for us, that's incorrect. Also, it stymies spiritual growth. You don't contribute anything to your own spiritual growth, and you're certainly not contributing anything to the creation. So it's important that we're responsible for ourselves and we contribute and control our own growth. The biggest defeat in life, after all, is just not being happy. And you can't be happy if life is a continuous series of defeats and failures that you're blaming on some outside influence. Not only that, it'll lead to diseases, breakdowns, closed-mindedness, any number of things. Well, I see we're running out of tape, so hit the old fast-forward button or just let it play out, and I'll see you on the next tape, okay?